Pulling streamers for walleye is an old technique that still works today. Today I'm going to tie an old school Susquehanna streamer. Stay tuned. So we're doing something a little bit different today. We're going to tie an old school streamer. I want to put it on a more modern hook, but use all the old, basically old materials and techniques with nothing too modern on it right now. It's a streamer that I still fish every once in a while here locally. Really like catching walleye on a streamer fly. You can troll with these. Pull them behind your canoe, troll with them in the boat, and kind of just drag them along. And we also are pretty successful with them just fishing from shore. So it's a very simple streamer. Any pattern that you would want to do with a jig, you can do with these, and it works equally well. So to begin, let's switch here. And just to start off, this is a finished one. Very simple. Here's a green and white. We're going to do the same pattern. This hook is a Carlisle, size 1. It's number 183N, and it's an old herder's hook. So I have a few boxes of these. You can tie these in any size that you want for your location. You can tie these any size hook that you're comfortable with, short shank, long shank, but anything that you typically use for a streamer. Even as tying them in tandem, if you're doing a tandem streamer, is real nice too. Here's another hook that we used a lot. It's a 34176. It's a Mustad O'Shaughnessy hook. But for a more modern, if you want to go with the TMC, it's 9395. These are size 2 from Umpqua. Nice hook. Again with that same bend, it's the Daiichi 2370, which is a nice streamer hook. And what I'm going to be using today, and I think I will do these on a 4, it's the Daiichi 1750. And if I take one out here, you'll see this has just the round bend. The one thing they all have in common is that straight hook eye. You can use any streamer hook you want. So if you have like the Mustad hook with the downturned eye, that works just fine. Though the straight eye is just really nice for a streamer, especially when you're pulling them behind the boat. So even though we're using a more modern hook, our newer hook, we're going to do everything else the old way. So I have Good Rod size A nylon rod wrapping thread, and I'm going to use this to begin my base, and I lock it on about an eye's length behind the eye, walking it back down the shank towards the bend of the hook, touching wraps. My touching wraps are slightly sloppy, but we will fix that on the way back. Just to the point of the hook. And right now I have size 14 Verni. This is real old school French tinsel on a nice wooden spool. It's a metal tinsel. Now You can use more modern material. This is the UTC Mylar with gold on one side and silver on the other, which works beautifully. One thing about this thread base with the size A thread, which is fairly thick, and the heavier French tinsel, and comparing it to the Mylar, is that pulling this through the water creates a little bit of drag and will sink the fly just a little bit more. Give it a little bit more action where you pull it forward and it drops. You let it go. It kind of floats back up an inch or so. Stop my last wrap right at the end here. Bring the tinsel around. I'm making a few wraps, touching wraps back towards the bend of the hook. And now I can bring it forward. I'm going to wrap it, leaving a gap, kind of like a barber pole. And capturing my wraps underneath the hook shank between the vise and my bobbin. So I bring this up the final time and bring the wrap around, and I'm going to bring it on the outside of my bobbin and switch hands. So now when I pick up my bobbin with my right hand, I can lock that right into place with 5 or 6 wraps back towards the bend of the hook. Perfect. First, let's start with the belly. Your pinch, in terms of quantity, is going to be very similar as if I was tying a regular bucktail jig. It'll be slightly smaller, thinner, but not by much. The proportions of this type of fly is very similar to the proportions you'd have on a bucktail jig. Probably I don't know, 1/8, a quarter maybe. And the only big difference is being the length of the body of this fly compared to the length of your hook shank. So I'm going to measure this. So it is roughly the length of the body past the bend of the hook. I can turn my vise, and this white goes on the bottom of the fly. Five wraps to lock it on, and I'm pulling straight up. A couple more wraps just to finish. Now pulling straight up will keep the hairs from rolling around the hook. You can see that the hairs extend perhaps right along the center line of the hook shaft itself. And I'm going with a green and white, for a typical old pattern. Color that works really well. Now if you want to modern this up a little bit, we would add crystal flash, we could add mylar tinsel, instead of the French tinsel, we could add weight under the wraps. We could use a regular floss for the body, a nice fly tying floss for a nice smooth body. But like I mentioned, we like using this thick size A nylon to help create a little bit of drag on this fly. Now I like fishing this from shore with a little bit of weight on the line, 12 to 18 inches up from the fly, and I'll cast it out into the current and let it swing around, and I pull it back, doing a couple different passes each time. But we always do well catching walleye on these. So now I'm measuring this out, and you want this to be the same size as the white. If it's a hair longer, that's just fine. You definitely don't want it shorter. So if it was a little bit longer, that just helps with the taper body if that's the look you're going for. I like them to be equal. So again, I can trim my pinch, keep this left hand tight throughout the whole process. And again, these are light wraps. So 4 wraps, a couple towards the bend of the hook, a couple towards the eye of the hook, and then I pull straight up. A couple wraps to secure it, a couple 4 wraps to secure it. And as you can see, I have that nice V-shaped. So that'll keep the fibers of the hair from pulling out. And we can now walk the thread up, fill in that bare hook shank a little bit, and we're just going to keep wrapping until we have a nicely shaped head. To make this process a little bit easier, I could have tied off the size A thread before I began adding the hair, and I could have used 2/0 thread, 2/0 nylon. Being a little bit smaller diameter, you use a lot more thread as you're wrapping this cone-shaped head, but it does make a pretty head. To finish this off, take a whip finish tool. I try to keep the wraps towards the back of this head. You can paint eyes on this. You can stick on eyes. You could use the brass spoon shaped eyes, which look nice on a streamer like this. Those would add a little bit more weight. You could add the small feathers for the eyes, anything like that. We do them very plain though. We have this black body with the silver tinsel and then 2 colors. At this point, I finish this off with lacquer based head cement and give it a nice coating. This is thinned down so it soaks into this head very nicely. and any lacquer that gets on the fibers of the hairs. Capillary action will soak into the hairs and then be drawn to the center of that of your thread. So a very simple streamer to tie. I think you'll have fun tying them, and I know you'll have fun catching fish on them. Until next time, guys, tight lines.